Hello everyone, and welcome back to episode 2 of Unwind with Dan. Negativity is an inevitability in this world, something we all have to face, something we can't avoid. However, some negativity is in our control. Some of it is able to be avoided, and it's in the content we consume in the media. Whilst negative media is necessary to us to prevent us living in a fake bubble of positivity and ignorance, the amount of which we consume and the negative effects that overconsumption can have on us is an important thing we should consider. This balance is certainly something I've been wanting to achieve more of myself. So let's start with a question. Which of these titles is more compelling to click on? Ways to help reduce climate change versus climate change is killing us. Is it too late? A lot of you probably at least thought the second, much more pessimistic one was more striking. Why was that second title more interesting? It's because even though the prior has a more useful sounding premise, the latter definitely has a negative tone. And negativity, unfortunately, sells. But why is that? It's due to something called negativity bias. This is a phenomenon where if most people were to pick between listening to content covering negativity/controversy or content with a more positive, neutral view, the majority would pick the prior. The reason this exists isn't yet fully understood, but the leading idea seems to be due to our ancestors. When our ancestors were surviving, danger was always around. The more we were able to notice this danger, the more likely we were to survive. Now that we all live, on average, I'd hope, a lot more comfortably, this heightened attention for danger has just morphed into a gravitation towards content containing negativity. But of course, negativity in the media does exist everywhere, and it is impossible to avoid, and we shouldn't even strive to remove it entirely anyway. When tragedy happens, like with war, or when we as humans do need to change, like with the climate crisis, these news points do need to be spoken about and spread. Coverage of topics like these is so vital as it leads to us being aware of problems in our society. And hopefully from that we can then be told about ways we can help. It is not this type of negativity I have an issue with. It is the type that comes with an over-exaggeration of these issues, or a strong inclination towards a negative tone and not a neutral one. I bring us back to that title comparison earlier. Ways to help reduce climate change versus climate change is killing us. Is it too late? The prior has a much more neutral, even positive tone, whilst the latter uses words like killing and too late. Both are talking about an important issue, but the latter uses a much more exaggerated and needlessly inflammatory tone. Another example is within politics, when video titles will contain phrases like Prime Minister candidate XYZ, shown to be a total idiot. It just brings about a polarised negative point of view, potentially even one filled with lies and slander. When in fact topics of debate like politics, I believe we should strive to consume more balanced, neutral ideas in order to have clearer discussion. One filled with a healthy progress in your ideas instead of one filled with a pointless back and forth of argument, or even one where no challenge is brought to your viewpoint at all, and instead your point of view just becomes even more polarised. It is this negativity in the media I'm referring to, this needless sort, one that is avoidable, one we can choose to consume in a different perspective. And the reason I believe this is important is because an overconsumption of too much negative content can sadly lead to adverse side effects arising. One of the effects I've noticed within myself after binging lots of inflammatory content is this internal rise in pessimistic emotion, leading to worse interactions with my family and friends. This is as expected. A study done on this phenomenon showed the exact same results. People who watched negative news for even 14 minutes showed a higher degree of unfavourable emotions like anxiety and sadness compared to a control group. Now, everyone is different, of course, and people do react in different ways. But on average, it can be evidence that yes, consuming more negative news can lead to more negativity within oneself. This bad effect definitely has contributed to me not wanting to consume this sort of inflammatory content in excess amounts, especially in times where I already feel more down than usual. And if more dismal emotions weren't enough, overconsumption of negative content can also lead to a greater volume of an experience known as catastrophizing, an anxiety-related issue which makes people overthink the future and think the worst is going to happen. It leads to your mind spiraling and going into a pit of worry. And once it is there, it is so hard to get out of it. My mind sometimes stresses about things way too far in the future. Poignant topics such as my future medical career being so unstable, my parents aging, and drifting apart from friends all sometimes encroach on my mind. Not only is this just unnecessary stress, but it takes me out of the present. The present where I need to make the most of my time in order to help mitigate those said worries in the first place. With less time catastrophizing, I could have more time to work towards my future, spend more quality time with my family, and catch up more with my friends. So what have I discovered to help with both of these problems? As with all potential issues we may face, preventing said issue in the first place is one of the most impactful ways forward. Without the cause, the trouble won't arise. Something I try to do is watch more positively framed channels, trying to steer choices of videos to ones without inflammatory words in the titles or thumbnails, and directing my attention to videos with more positive or neutral outlooks is something I've been trying. Of course, I'm not recommending you quit watching videos with negativity altogether, but potentially if you find yourself with any of the aforementioned issues, and you perhaps watch a lot of content with negativity, then maybe having a more balanced choice of media is something you could consider as well. We never need to remove it completely, but like all things in this world, too much of one thing can lead to consequences. So how do we mitigate these effects of an excess of inflammatory content? Like any issues affecting our mood and personality, the solutions often require speaking to someone, or at least the self-awareness to reflect and even speak to yourself. And I don't mean in a way that implies you're talking to someone imaginary, but more so in a way that coincides with an internal monologue. Not one that controls your day-to-day, but more so one that you can choose to listen to when the time is right, during peaceful, still parts of the day. Time where you can sit down and think about certain interactions and see whether there was anything to improve, but also importantly as well, anything you're happy with, even proud of doing that day. For example, the same time you could be listening to this is time where I would hope there would be time to reflect as well. Certainly, whilst I write these episodes, I also take breaks and use this time of stillness to think about how I conducted myself today. Of course, being cautious not to overthink and turn this into an unhealthy practice as well. Again, a good balance is needed. To improve how self-aware we are, a great practice is mindfulness. A lot of you may have heard this before, but mindfulness is the practice of being aware and noticing both your external and internal environment. In this case, being aware of what you're internally thinking is what we would be aiming for, as this would help us be able to notice our own mental health in case any issues were present. It's a topic which deserves its own whole episode, so I won't go further here, but I can link some helpful sites in the description. Negativity in this world is unavoidable. However, how much negativity in the media we consume is something we do have control over. Whilst we shouldn't try to avoid it altogether, if you notice the negative effects of it slowly encroaching on you, perhaps taking a step back and steering your attention towards positively framed or more neutral viewpoints could be a nice change. A change to make your own perspective a more positive one. One filled with less pessimistic emotion and anxiety. Only you can truly know how you feel. No matter what anyone says, in the end, it's up to you to decide whether any small change is needed. The more self-aware we become, the easier it is to know. And that brings us to the end. If you enjoyed, please consider liking and subscribing. Again, any informal references and websites are in the description, as well as my piano notes. I hope you have a lovely day, and thank you for listening to Unwind with Dan.